Hi, welcome everybody. We're going to get started. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to be talking about this workshop, and there's some tools out front. I hope you all got some tips, strategies of how to navigate the insurance claim world. You're suddenly been thrust in the world of insurance. It takes years and years of finessing and understanding concepts on how to navigate it. It took us many years to learn it properly, so we'll share our information with you. The way we'll handle the questions and answers are just raise your hand, and we'll have a microphone passed around. A couple of our associates will be running around and giving you a microphone because there's a lot of great questions that come out of these workshops. And we want everybody to hear your question so we can answer it out here. A little background on ourselves. We're the Greenspan Company. We've been in business since 1947. I've been a public advocate for 24 years. Ken's been in the business as an advocate for 33 years. So between Kyle, Richard, Kenny, and myself, there's probably almost 100 years of experience in this room. So we can certainly answer all your questions. We're here to answer the hard questions, the ones you can't really ask the insurance company directly because just sometimes you get a funky answer. So we'll answer all those questions, and we'll do the best we can to move this along. We've got 2 solid hours and a lot of information to share. We are a Bay Area company. This is our backyard. We've been involved in pretty much all the firestorms in recent California history. Unfortunately for us, we see this quite often, and we understand how the insurance companies handle things, how they don't handle things, and all the dynamics that come with these firestorms. And we'll be talking about that. And we'll get you through the different areas of coverage and how the policies do respond. If you haven't figured it out by now, you've got 4 claims going on your residential losses. You've got four different buckets of coverage that you're covered for. You've got the dwelling, which is A. It's kind of broken down on an A, B, C, and D, usually on your deck page. A is your dwelling. B is other structures, and that means anything that's anything that's unattached, pools, sheds, walkways, driveways, etc. Your third claim is personal property. And your fourth claim is loss of use. We're going to be hitting each category individually and talking about all the issues that surround those categories. For those of you that have commercial losses out there, you typically have 2 or 3 claims. You've got your building damages, you've got code upgrades, and you've got loss of rental income. And we'll answer those questions as they come up. Okay, so first slide is what is a public adjuster? Who are we? Why do we do what we do? This comes up quite a bit, so we put together a video to kind of explain it best.
When a wildfire strikes, you watch helplessly in disbelief as your home and your community are ravaged. As you console your family, you begin to think about the financial recovery. How can you possibly overcome this? The insurance company will require you to prepare a detailed claim in a form they deem acceptable to determine how much you are owed. First, you will need to recreate what your house looked like before the wildfire. This includes gathering plans and photographs that hopefully weren't destroyed. Next, in most cases, in order to collect all of your personal property benefits, you will need to inventory every single item, thousands and thousands, including their age, condition, and current replacement cost. And if you are considering rebuilding, moving, downsizing, or enlarging, there's no way of knowing how your insurance company will respond to your goals. Living on the West Coast, you have heard countless stories about the difficulties in recovering all that the insurance company owes. Many insurance companies rotate adjusters, making it very difficult to keep the process moving forward. There must be someone who has your best interest in mind that can assist you through this process. What if you had your very own adjuster, known as a public adjuster, an experienced professional whose team works exclusively in your corner, preparing, presenting, and negotiating the optimum amount for your claim so that you don't have to. That is exactly what we provide for you. Our job is to make sure you are comfortable and to get the most from the insurance company while working through the roadblocks they often present so that you can get back to your life and family sooner. That's what we do. Our firm has represented homeowners like you in every major firestorm event in the last 70 years, and we have garnered hundreds of letters of commendation that we're happy to share with you. So if you've lost your home to a recent wildfire, don't stress, don't wait. Call the Greenspan Company Adjusters International today. We're ready to get to work for you.
So that's what a public adjuster is. If you were to look at your claim as a pie, it would kind of look like this. Your dwelling is typically the biggest portion of, I call it personally the meat and potatoes part of the claim because it's the big dollar value. The dwelling extended limits are another portion which gets unlocked if the basic limit gets met. We're going to be talking about this. Personal property is the other bigger bucket that's up there. It's so those two are your big ones, and then you've got things like your replacement cost holdback. We'll be talking about separate structures right here, and that's again your sheds, garages, anything detached. We'll talk about code upgrades. If you choose to rebuild, you're going to have to bring that building up to code. ALE means additional living expense. That's your temporary housing. Okay, that's the money in the bucket that pays for your living elsewhere temporarily for the period of restoration. Hot topic here, debris removal. That's going to be part of the conversation. And then trees, shrubs, and plants are covered. How many people here have ordered a certified copy of the policy? Okay, less than 50%. Order a certified copy of the policy, for those of you who haven't. And it's not the way they mail it to you. It comes from underwriting. It takes a couple of weeks. The reason you want a certified copy of your insurance policy is because it'll show the latest forms and endorsement changes that occurred during the policy period. Your policy goes 12 months, 1 year to the next. And in the middle of that policy period, the language changes. And you get that one sheet that says California endorsement change, and most people just stuff it in the drawer or throw it away. Well, that's the language of your policy being changed, and you need to know what those changes are because it affects you now that you're using the policy to have a recovery. So it takes a couple of weeks, comes in from underwriting. Sometimes they push back, but you want to order it and get it from the adjuster. Order it from the adjuster, and I would put it in writing so that you have some kind of a track record there that you've ordered it. Do you want to talk about anything?
She had a question, I think.
Yes. Yes.
So I asked for a certified copy, and they said, well, there's no such thing. And I said, well, original.
Yeah, there is such a thing. Yeah. Don't let them buffalo you, folks. Look, we're going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And don't shoot the messengers here because we're going to tell you how it really is out there. Yes?
Can I order for my mom?
Sure, I don't see why not. Yes, if you're acting on your mom's behalf. Yeah, absolutely.
Do that in writing, or
I would put everything in writing. If you're having a conversation with an adjuster from the insurance company, you better memorialize that immediately. You get on the email, on your computer, tablet, whatever, and you email that person basically, this is my understanding of today's conversation. Bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, please confirm. Because when that adjuster gets reassigned, and it gets reassigned again and again, and 7 or 8 people deep, and you don't have any track record of what those conversations are, you're done for. You're going to be at a very big disadvantage. And oftentimes, the third adjuster doesn't agree with the second adjuster, and the fifth adjuster doesn't know what the first adjuster did. And these people are coming in from out of state, and they want to go home. It's the holidays, and they're doing a quick in and out job. Not okay. So just memorialize it. Yes, you had a question?
So I went into the insurance office, asked for a complete copy, which is 55 pages long. That's different than a certified copy?
Certified comes in from underwriting. Kenny, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, certified copy, you can request it. Some of the carriers, like I remember we had a loss with Safeco, and they gave the insured a policy, and it was missing a California endorsement that that changed the coverage from the 150% extended replacement cost to 200%. And some of the adjusters that are from out of state don't even know about some of these endorsements. There are only a few out there. You want to ask for a certified copy of the policy. It certifies and it comes from underwriting that this is a clear and complete policy. And it's usually stamped with a signature. That's what you want to ask for. Mainly because policies change over the years. And if you've got an old one, it's not going to have your present forms.
We have a mic coming over. Let's get a microphone.
If everyone can just wait till the mic comes, because sometimes the questions people ask are important for everyone else.
Okay, we've asked and asked and asked for a copy, not even a certified, and we have not received it yet. And we started right on the 9th of November asking for this, and we haven't received it yet.
State Farm?
No, all states.
All
So
state.
how do we do that? How do we pressure them
You know,
to get
we
it?
had the same problem in Santa Rosa. It took forever for our clients to get copies and for us to get copies. Just continue to respond to request. And by the way, everyone should know that when you request something in writing or you reach out to the adjuster, they are obligated under the Department of Insurance regs to respond to a written request within 15 days. So keep documenting the claim.
So typically we do, on the 4 different buckets, we typically go A, B, C to D. But I want to start with the D bucket, the housing, because that seems to be the biggest crux right now. So I'm going to kind of fast forward this slide presentation over to the loss of use. Okay, so your policies provide temporary housing. Some policies have a dollar limit, some have a time limit. And if you see this language on it, ALE means the additional living expense. That again pays for your temporary housing, furniture rental. You're not going to go out and buy furniture. You're going to have them lease it for you because you don't know what you're going to build or buy, so there's no sense in replacing your furniture yet. So you want to use this bucket. The increased mileage is covered, just so you know. A lot of you are traveling more. There's an app that is great. It's called Mile IQ. Mile IQ. It's $4.99 last I checked. And it's a great little app that tracks all your mileage for you. It relieves you of the burden of the old pad and pen on the dash. Okay, so it's a great little app for $4.99 because it adds up into thousands of dollars at the end of the claims process. They do pay for additional mileage. RV and boat storage covered. Animal boarding is covered. Dollar limit or time limit. For those of you with a time limit, the law was, it may say 12 months on your policy, but it was kicked up to 24 months. Now it's 36 months. So it went up. The law just changed a couple of weeks ago, which is great. Here's the caveat. For those of you that have a dollar limit in that bucket, just because you have 3 years, it doesn't mean they're going to pay it for 3 years. Once that limit is exhausted, they're done. The insurance company's off the hook. And furthermore, there's a thing called the period of restoration. And the period of restoration is what dictates the length of time that they're willing to pay for you guys to stay out of your home and into temporary housing. For those of you with commercial properties, same thing. There's a limit to the loss of rental income that you can collect based on the period of restoration. So once the insurance company issues you some money towards the dwelling or building, the question I would have is, does the clock start ticking? Because somebody at their corporate office is going to make a decision that, hey, we paid you some money a month or so after, and you've been sitting around for 13 months. What have you done? You have to move with diligence and dispatch. That's what it says in your policy. And if you don't have, if you can't provide documentation or some kind of track record that you're either going to, you're rebuilding, you're talking to contractors, you're meeting with realtors, engineers, and architects, then they can shut off that faucet, basically, and shut you down. So you have to really provide and show them that you're moving with some diligence and dispatch so that your temp housing money can continue. And again, up to the limit of the policy. Do you want to add on?
Yeah, I'd like to just add one thing. Obviously, if you're going to replace your property and buy a home and you share that immediately, then the insurance company may look at that and say, certainly could replace a home sooner than you could rebuild. And I think realistically, it'll be surprising if anyone's even rebuilt within 2 years, from what I've heard. So if you are going to replace, I wouldn't just jump to conclusions you're going to do that. And by the way, it may take a while for you to find a replacement home. But certainly I would be sharing with the insurance company now that we're not sure what we're doing. We'd love to rebuild, but we're not sure when we'll even be able to start. And that buys you some time. You're not feeling pressured.
And same with the commercial buildings, same thing. If you can't get in there and fix it, or if it's a complete strip to studs, that's all part of your loss of rental income. So the carrier owes for the increased cost due to the limited housing. So we're starting to see it. Housing prices or renting prices are going up incrementally, and this is pretty common in these firestorms. What was $1,500 a month may now be $2,300 a month, and it's getting harder and harder to find housing. So the carrier owes that increased cost. And remember, if you get that budget there, that dollar limit, you got to be mindful, because out of that budget is going to come the rental of the furnishings and the rent. And typically what they'll do is the carrier will pay maybe 4 to 6 months to the landlord up front and then go month to month. A good strategy, folks, would be if you can get them to pay, 8 months, 12 months, because you don't want to get into this month-to-month game with the insurance company, whether it's loss of business income or the rental. They usually have check runs once a month, and they're always late. And then your landlord's going to be screaming, "Where's my money? You said the insurance company's paying me." So try to get as much as you can peeled off the table for your housing. Okay. Kenny, do you want to talk about fair rental value here?
Yeah, sure.
For those of them that
So
have it?
there are some policies, I think CIG and AAA or CSAA, where they offer fair rental value as an option. Instead of making claim for your additional living expenses, you could go ahead and make claim for what your house would rent for. And not necessarily before the fire. In Santa Rosa, a lot of people that had coverage with AAA were asking for fair rental value, and it ended up being a big number. How you spend that, it's up to you. You get paid that monthly fair rental valuation. You have to just prove and document to the carrier what your house would rent for now after the fire. Now, AAA won't pay fair rental value for a furnished home, only an unfurnished home. I don't think it's right, and I think they owe for a furnished home for the rental valuation. CIG, I'm not sure what they're doing, but I believe it's fair rental value with furnishings. There was a question someone had?
Who determines the fair rental value? Because I am now with a son here in Chico, and I pulled a 27-foot trailer, next to the house, and they're trying to tell me it's like $1,200 a month.
Okay.
And I had a 3-bedroom, bath and a half, so.
Who are you insured with?
Horace Mann.
Okay. I remember a loss with them. I think that they pay fair rental value, but it's the fair rental value of your home, and you could argue furnished. There are relocation companies that the insurance companies use. They also address fair rental valuation. You can certainly just go out on the market right now. You can't even find a house to rent. But I can assure you that the rental rates are anywhere from 50% to 100% more than what they were before the fire.
So,
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I would challenge anything they're coming down the pike with. Just experience over and over shows that they're historically somewhere around 40% light. Okay? Remember, folks, you're making a claim to the insurance company. They're not making a claim to you. They don't have any obligation to be accurate. It's horrific to say that, but it's true. They have no duty to perform. You could have $1 million loss, calculable, and they say, well, I think we owe you $500,000. You have to prove to them what it is they owe you. And in the absence of doing that, they'll be glad to do it for you. And most people just go trust it, and they'll say, it's my insurance company, I trust it. I'm telling you should challenge it. Everything's negotiable with an insurance company. Yes, sir.
So they send a check in advance for like 4 months. Mm-hmm. That doesn't bind me if I cash it and use it?
No, it's just in advance.
Just in advance?
Right.
Okay.
But you should challenge it, because it keeps going up. So the fair rental value.
So when you get something like that occurs, and you decide to cash the check, which you can do, just make sure you send an email out to them that states, I'm not in agreement with your valuation. My endorsement of this check does not prejudice my right to make further claim.
Yeah, so remember, everything's negotiable with an insurance company, everything. Okay? Unless you're grossly underinsured and they've paid you the policy limit. We got a question down there. Then they pay you the limits. How many people here are farmers? Okay, I'm sure you're well aware, they're paying limits across the boards, and that's good. And for the rest of you, you're going to have to work for it. Okay? It's unfortunate that farmers are the only one right now that we've seen that is paying the limits of your insurance policy. The horseman as well? Well, it either tells me you're grossly underinsured or that they've stepped up to the plate like they should. Yeah, so, and for those of you that get, yeah, I'll be right there. For those of you that get the limits, oftentimes what we see is the reason you're getting limits quickly is because you're grossly underinsured. Yes, question?
Yeah, I have a house that did not burn. How can I get the insurance company to pay for total loss versus diminished value?
Great question. What is the damage? Is it still standing? Then it's not considered a constructive total. It might be a strip to studs, but they're not going to pay for a total constructive total loss unless you can prove it. Yeah.
The city infrastructure won't be viable for 2 years, and I'm not going to live in that thing.
Yeah, there's more than that. For those of you that have structures still standing, we're getting calls every day. What do? I'd be concerned if it was my house. I would be concerned about the hazmat exposure. The hospital went down. You've got the radiology and all this stuff floating around. Lead and asbestos. There's a company that'll come out and swab and test and give you an indication what kind of hazmat you're exposed to. And look, it could be a strip to studs, the whole house, and then it gets redone.
So, Reno, if I can add
Yeah,
something.
sure, yeah.
So, I think the first thing, and by the way, carriers are going to want you to clean everything
Right.
versus replacing. They only owe for what's physically damaged. Obviously, the homes have smoke contamination of some extent. What you want to do is you want to reach out to what's called a certified hygienist. And they actually, some of them are doctors, but they have a special degree, a skill, and they will then come out and swab the different areas. You want to look at your attic insulation because there's probably smoke contamination. You want to also have the samples tested for carbon, for asbestos, for lead, whatever testing, and it's expensive, but that should be done. And the results of that testing are going to determine what you need to do in the building. Insurance companies should pay for it.
Yep.
They should pay for it. It's typically under coverage B, or pardon me, coverage A. However, you may also want to do the same testing and probably should do similar testing on the contents as well.
Yeah, that's really important. We have a question up here. Mike's coming down.
So I have a question on a rental property. They, on section D, loss of use, is it a capped limit? So let's say we aren't able to rebuild for 2 years, and it should last 2 years, and if it lasts longer than that, then are they responsible?
Is the amount for coverage D, is there a dollar amount on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you would figure out what your rent is per month, and if it ends up taking 2 years to rebuild, and you're only insured for 1.5 years, that's the most you're going to get. That dollar amount is the most that you can collect.
Yeah, they're off the hook. Once you reach that limit, the insurance company's off the hook because that's what your contract says.
8 months,
I'm sorry?
even though it's just for 8 months, Brent. It doesn't matter, the time didn't matter once you reach the limit.
Yeah, the limit's the limit, right. You bought a contract and the contract has a finite dollar value there. Yes?
So back to testing of contents. So my house is still standing, but everything was damaged by the intense heat because parts of it burned. the soot or whatever, the smoke, it's not just smoke, it's a greasy film.
Yeah, it's the plastics.
So how do you have, it's the plastics exactly, and the foam rubber. and-
Right.
How do you have, like, do you have to have each and every item tested? Is
I
that
think
what
you can
guys
do
are-
a sampling. What's on the furniture should also be on the floor and should be on the wall. So I think you do you figure out, and the hygienist will figure it out.
Yeah.
Because their license is on the line as well. And they'll come up with what's called a protocol. First of all, protocol for what should be tested. And then you're going to want to have them clear it with the insurance company, obviously. Try to make them be part of the process, but be firm that, hey, I'm not moving back in until it's all tested. And that's a good point. What's really going to happen? I don't think people can move back in until they know if they've got all of their utility hookups. And then, of course, the big issue that you run into is you spend a lot of money cleaning the home if it can be cleaned or stripped out. Well, what happens if you do all that, the buildings around you haven't been demolished, they come in and start doing debris removal, and all the same stuff that contaminated your home is now back in. So there's got to be discussions with the insurance company with respect to how and when you move back into your home.
Do you have another question? No?
Who select the certified hygienist? Does the insurance company select them, or do you select them?
You can select them, but remember, they've got the checkbook, so if you're gonna make a move, you wanna talk to them and say, look, I've got a hygienist, they're certified, they're probably on the list as an approved vendor for the insurance company. Let them know, and they'll say, yeah, that's fine, have it done, absolutely. Yeah, remember, you don't wanna jump in the water unless you get the lifeline. So they've got the checkbook. So we get calls every day that, I went ahead and did this and it cost $50,000 and now they only want to pay me 20. Well, you don't want to put the cart before the horse. It's really important to get commitment from the insurance company before you make that move. Okay, that way that they commit to the money and you know it's going to be there.
No different than why we get retained. You want to be in control of the process, not necessarily the insurance company, although that's hard when your home burns down and you've never done this before. But you want to be proactive. You want them to feel like they're part of the process, but you want to be proactive.
Question.
How are you able to get the insurance companies to talk to you when we can't get them to talk to us?
It's called 70 years of fighting. 70 years in the business. Look, there is a law. It's 15 days, and I think we mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
When you ask the insurance company a question and you put it in writing, they have 15 days to respond. Now, some respond right away. Some will wait 15 days. Some will wait 25 days. So it's all over the map, we say it. So you just keep hammering away, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Remember the old saying, right? So you can escalate it to claims management. You're the consumer, folks. You are the consumer. You're making a claim. You bought a contract. So, you use your rights. Use your rights. Yeah, we have a couple questions popping up. One in the back.
Did you review debris removal and the state doing the cleanup versus a private contractor?
Yes, we'll be talking about the debris removal program once we get to bucket A. And that'll be for commercial buildings as well as residential. We're still kind of on the temp housing. Are there any questions on the temp housing? I want to make sure we're clear, because this is a big one. The most immediate needs after a firestorm is housing. Yes?
Yeah, my mom has State Farm, and they haven't done much of anything for her. She, right off the bat, she went to my sister's.
Okay.
And then a week later, obviously it wasn't working out there, so she tried to find a place. There wasn't a place. So they said, well, we'll pay for you to move to Reading, and there's a hotel there. And she goes, well, I don't know anybody. I'm 84. I can't be in Reading away from everybody. I don't know anybody. Mm-hmm. And so she went to Medford, and they said, out of state, no, we won't cover that. She's living in Medford, Oregon now. And they won't answer at all about almost anything.
Is it an out-of-state adjuster?
I have no idea. I'm trying to get a hold of the adjuster. I've had a really difficult time getting a hold of anybody.
Yeah, this is historic, guys. This is something that we've never seen at this magnitude. So the insurance companies are a mess. They're a mess right now. If you're breathing and you got two legs, you can go get a job right there as an adjuster. They're hiring anybody, and it's problematic because they don't know you know, they don't, most of them, I should say, don't know the law. They want to go back home, they're in from out of state, and they're going to go to Alaska, or the next catastrophe that's happening. And your file keeps getting switched, so just keep hammering away, put it in writing. The DOI, the Department of Insurance, start logging complaints with them. They'll start getting letters. Remember, you got the Department of Insurance out there, folks, that you can, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to add one other thing before we move to the next topic. Some people and clients of ours, they can't find a home. They can't find a home to rent. They can't find a home to even buy, which is another option I'll talk about in a minute. So some of them are buying RVs. And it doesn't mean you buy an RV and it comes out of your personal property money or your building money. You want to have discussions with the carrier, because an RV may cost you $50,000 or $60,000. Believe me, over the next 2-3 years, the carrier is going to pay a lot more in having to rent a home to you and rent furnishings. So that's certainly a discussion that you guys may want to have. There are some clients we had in Santa Rosa where the rents were so high, it made more sense to buy a home, but a temporary home, not a replacement home. And they had discussions with the carrier on getting paid the market rent for that home. And that's maybe another possible option.
Before we hit some questions, for those of you that have been couch surfing, or staying at a relative's home, the room and board is they're supposed to pay for it. Okay, so they're entitled to it. The people that are putting you up are entitled to room and board for the fair and reasonable amount, because if they weren't there, you'd be in a hotel racking up $100, $200 a day. Okay, so they are entitled to room and board. Let's answer some questions.
There's
A
one
lot
back
of
there.
questions. All right, we're going to
Richard has one.
Under the ALE, don't we have like added food expenses, that kind of thing? Are we
Yes.
supposed to be keeping our receipts for going out?
If
and
you're
that
at a
kind of thing?
hotel and you don't have cooking facilities, you're entitled to collect for the additional meal expenditures you're incurring. So maybe before the fire, between groceries and going out, you spent $100 a week, and now you're spending $300 a week in meals. You're entitled to collect that additional $200. Well, that becomes a little grayer area, and you need to have some discussions with the carrier and saying, especially if they're not charging you anything. You know, you could have, the carrier shouldn't have an issue with you going out.
We got a question there? Yes, ma'am.
What about receipts? Do they want receipts, or you just talk to them and?
While you're displaced and you're incurring expenses you otherwise wouldn't have, you need to hold on to those receipts. Because at some point, they're going to have a discussion with you. What do you normally spend to eat at home? What are you spending now? And that difference is what they pay for out of bucket D, your temporary
And
housing.
they'll want the receipts.
Yeah, they'll want the receipts. Because you have to prove your losses. Just because they know your house is maybe on the ground, but there's still that mechanism of insurance. You have to prepare, present, and negotiate. Yes, up here? Yes, hi.
Yeah, I have a question. We're staying with my aunt,
Okay.
and she's afraid that if we pay her, and then the ALE refunds us, that her taxes will go up.
So what the carriers will do is, if the carrier pays her directly, or the ALE company that the carrier brings out, she will be 1099. You know, there's no way around it. There may be another way around it, is if you pay that person and you ask the carrier to be reimbursed, then it goes to you and you're not 1099. You can try to have those discussions. The carrier may still say, well, but it's going to her anyway, and so we need to 1099 her, even though you're paying it. But I would certainly make sure that you pay her and then give a copy of the canceled check and send it to the carrier and ask for reimbursement. That may be a way around it.
Question, Kyle? Yes.
Well, you're covering a lot of what I was trying to say, but we're in a little trailer in our daughter's driveway, and she's a single parent going to Chico State, and so we feel like we're just sort of living off of her, you know, we're using all her facilities and everything, and how do we know how much we could charge for what we're getting from her? We're using her washer, dryer, everything.
Yeah, great question, great question.
So it's funny, a client of ours just bought a fifth wheel, and he's parked it at a place that rents out space, $600 a month. That's what they're charging him. Now he gets the use of the utilities, and they may have a washer and dryer there. So, you know, figure out what's reasonable. You're using our electricity, you're using things. Now, the carrier may say, well, just tell us what their normal utilities are and what they're incurring now and pay the difference. But you may want to suggest, hey, we're going to rent this space. We're putting a big RV in front of the house. And just be aware that she may get taxed on the income that you pay her. But there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah, it's got to be fair and reasonable. It's got to, as long as it's fair and reasonable, then they got to pay it. Because again, if you know, for those of you that are staying at a relative's, and they're paying, the insurance companies have to pay, whether it's a hotel, at a relative, or, you know, wherever. There's got to be an expense. That's a use it or lose it bucket. If you don't use it, they keep it. It's there for you. It's your benefit. So as long as you know how to, you know, what it's there for and what it pays for, you want to use every penny of it if you can. We've got some questions. Be right with you.
My insurance adjuster said he wants to determine a lifestyle. Well, we're in a different lifestyle than we were before. I mean, we're in a...
Okay, was that for your contents claim or for the loss of use?
For the... I'm not sure.
Okay, so that brings up two things for me. Lifestyle. So what they're trying to determine is what is your the way you live. So for example, if you're in a 2,000 square foot home and now you want to go rent a 5,000 square foot home, that's not fair and reasonable, right? So they're trying to get a read on how you shop, if it's a contents related issue, your buying trend, your buying patterns. These are real conversations you're going to be having with the insurance company. So they can kind of get a feel for you. And look, sometimes they'll look at your income versus what you're claiming. They can do that kind of stuff. So just, you know, you can answer the question and say. Right, so your standard, thank you for bringing that up. Your standard of living is to remain the same. That's what it says in the policy. Your standard of living is to remain the same. Not better, not worse, but the same. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of problems finding housing. I met a family yesterday that was crammed in a little apartment, and they had a beautiful big home on a sprawling ranch. And it's incredible. So, but the thing is, they're not locked into a year lease. They're doing a month to month, because when the market kind of settles down, they can go out. So, for those of you that are in a smaller situation, try not to lock into a one-year lease. Try, because if in 3 months you're going crazy, you're going to want to get out of there and go into something else. Okay, if you're used to, you know.
Or maybe you have the opposite with an insurance company says, well, we're only going to lock you in for 1 year because we think you can get your home rebuilt.
Right.
I mean, we had some of that in Santa Rosa.
More questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, we're trying to buy an RV, and our insurance company said they'll pay the first 2 years on the note, like if we finance it, and the space. Is that seem?
That sounds reasonable.
That's not too bad. It sounds like it's, what, 80% of the purchase price or something?
No, it was like 180 month, 180 month, 144 month.
So will it be paid for by the time in 2 years? No.
Why not just
finance it for 24 months? Yeah.
All right, well, you didn't come to us to ask the question, but no, I mean, or you know what? Another way to look at it is you buy it, the carrier is technically entitled to the salvage, so what's the salvage value after 2 years? If you buy it for $60,000, after 2 years, the salvage may only be $25,000. You know, that you could work it out and say to the carrier, we'll credit the difference. You know, we want to keep it. Or, hey, carrier, take it. It's yours. If it's worth so much money, let them have it.
Okay, we need some mics. We're going to follow the mic, as they said. We got one back there, ma'am, and we'll be right with you.
If we oversee the construction of a new home and we park the RV at the site, we're being told it's going to take 8 months to a year for the planning commission to review the plan set, the architectural renderings, followed by the ability to actually affect construction, while the EIR, the EIS is being performed by federal entities. We're looking at 3 years plus. So the question I have is, if we invest in an RV, we pay it, buy it, give them, would you recommend that we proceed down that road where we just buy it and build them, or schedule the payments over a 3-year period? And here's the question. At the end of that 3-year period, that house is still under construction. Do they have the right to sequester the vehicle because I'm out of the 3-year window? Or do I get to live in the RV until the house is completed?
Okay. There's a bunch of different questions. So before I answer any of them, the very first thing you want to do is you want to figure out what is the rental value of your home. And I'm assuming the RV is furnished. So find out what is my rental value of my home now in today's market. And if it's $3,000 a month, hypothetically, well then in 24 months you're already way over the amount of that RV, I suspect. Because now you're looking at around $75,000. So that's what I would do. I would first find out what's the valuation. What would the carrier be obligated to potentially pay if you have to rent a home somewhere else? And obviously, if the RV is a lot less, they would opt for that, and then have discussions with them. If you lease an RV, after 3 years, they're only entitled to pay for the 3-year time frame. Or if your home could get rebuilt in less than 3 years, they're entitled to pay you for the time frame it would take once the home is rebuilt. Sounds good.
We're looking at RVs that will effectively absorb the value, which is in this case $100,000.
Okay. Just clarify with them that it's your understanding that they're not going to be asking for the salvage on that RV, and after the 2 or 3 year time frame it takes for you to either rebuild or replace, that you get to keep it. Put everything in writing, folks.
We've got a bunch of
Believe
questions.
me, otherwise you'll be haunted later on.
We'll be right there, sir. Hold on. Yes.
Quick question, I hope. Back to if you can't find housing, but there's something in Reno or out of state like Medford. So
That's fine.
it is?
Yeah,
Okay,
why
because
not?
he just said they told her his mom, no out of state. So I wondered if there was
Challenge it.
limitations or.
Tell them to show you in the policy where it says that. Show me.
The only thing that you need to be aware of is that the budget is established based on what it would cost for you to replicate your lifestyle locally. So again, to use the extreme, just to use an extreme example, the cost of renting a 1,500 square foot home here, let's say that's $2,500 a month. In San Francisco, it would be $8,000 a month. You can go and live in San Francisco, but it's based on the $2,500 a month budget established locally.
Good point, Kyle. Thank you. Yeah, we have a question here.
Just a bit of a follow-up on the after fire value of the rental in terms of the current cost. We have AAA, and they just Zillowed our house and looked at what, and that was of course prior to. Is there a recommendation or a suggestion of how to get them, or how would we find out what the current value would be? Just look at like what rentals in Chico are going for at that square footage now?
Yeah, I think so. Ask them, whoever they use, because they probably use what's called a relocation company. They typically will use someone. They just Zillowed it and just say, look, my house wouldn't rent for now after the fire for this, and here's what it's really going for.
It's a negotiation. Everything is going to be a negotiation. And again, the only caveat to that is if they pay you the limit, they're off the hook. It means more than likely you may be grossly underinsured. Any other questions on this particular topic, your temporary housing? For those of you with commercial properties, loss of rental income, that's going to be affected by the period of restoration, how long it's going to take. Typically, you may have 12 months or a dollar limit in that bucket for loss of rental income. Any questions?
And I think the key to note there on the commercial properties is that the elongating of the timeline for residential from 2 years to 3 years, that does not apply to the commercial properties.
Yep. Most of the policies are either 12 months. CIG has a policy where it's 24 months.
Okay. We're going to move backwards to bucket A. Let me kind of go through this real quick. Okay. So there's going to be 3 scenarios you're going to fall into. Scenario 1, you choose not to rebuild. Scenario 2, you're going to purchase a replacement property elsewhere, whether it's here, Oregon, Seattle, Utah, wherever. Or you're going to rebuild on site. Each one of these categories has their own situations that you need to qualify for, what their obligations are. So if you choose not to rebuild, then Kenny, you can do the rest thing and do this first column.
Sure.
So in this example, we have a base limit of 400,000. Just a random number, it's 400,000. Other structures coverage is typically 10%, so that's where there's 40,000. It's always 10% off of this number, the base limit. Debris removal, which we're going to be talking about, for the gentleman in the back that brought it up, is 5% additional coverage, okay, 5% of this number, only if this number is reached and exceeded. Then the door opens up to debris removal money, because debris removal is part of reconstruction. And if your numbers fall under this number, then that debris removal amount's going to come out of that base limit. So we're going to talk about that a little further. Landscaping, an additional 5% of that is 20,000. Trees, bushes, shrubs. For those of you that are land heavy, that'll go real quick. Okay, so you add it up, and that's 5% of the, I do that all the time. 5% of this number.
With a limitation, most policies are either $500 or $750 per tree, shrub, or bush. So obviously you've got a big tree, you're going to spend more than that just taking it down. So be aware that if you get a landscaping estimate, whomever you hire to do that, you have to break out each of the trees and what it would cost to replace and to remove.
How many people here have had that brought up by their insurance company? Hands? The landscape? 3%. So, again, they're not volunteer to tell you a lot of stuff, and this is why we're here. We want to show you what these policies have inside them. These are the critical questions you need to ask, because they do add up. 10,000 here, 20,000 there. It adds up, folks. We'll be right there on your question. And continuing on this column, if you choose not to rebuild, how many people here know what extended replacement cost means? Very few, very few. We're going to talk about that. I'll talk about it now. Extended replacement cost is an endorsement in almost all the homeowner policies that kicks up extra money. In this example, it's 50% of this number. Some policies are 20%. Some are 25%. But the only way to qualify for that extra money is you have to open the door to get into that endorsement. And the way you open the door and unlock it is if you exceed this number. Okay? Once you exceed that base limit, the debris opens up, money there, the extended replacement cost dollars open up, and they like to keep the door closed. Okay, we're going to get to the questions in a moment. So this extended replacement cost endorsement, look for it. Now, some of the carriers, like Safeco, there's some carriers that have, in a declared disaster, which this is, it kicks bucket A, B, C, and D up 50%, sometimes 100%. So you could have a decent policy. Now it's a great policy to work with. So you got to look for the language. That's why it's in that certified copy. Okay? Critical dollars there. We'll get to those in a second. Additional increase due to, that's this what we're talking about here. If you don't rebuild, you're not going to get that money. You don't qualify for it. Okay? Code upgrade, they owe you for what you had a minute before the fire plus code. And code is a finite number. It's typically 10%, sometimes up to 100% of the base limit. Are you entitled to it? No. If you don't rebuild, you don't qualify. And that's an incurred bucket. You have to spend it to get it. Okay, so if you don't rebuild.
Does everybody know what code upgrades are? Okay, so code upgrades are the incremental increased costs to rebuild the same home that you had, but based on today's codes. So the 25-year-old foundation may be required to have more rebar, deeper footings, more concrete. That's the incremental cost. So when we establish what your losses are, we look at what it would cost to put the building back exactly as it was a minute before the fire, and then the incremental costs under code to bring it code compliant. Fire sprinkler systems, fire retardant materials, boxed eaves, fire retardant decks, LED lighting, energy efficient HVAC systems. All the costs that you would need to incur now if you rebuild on site.
I want to share something. We were recently for a few months up at the car fire in Reading, and something interesting happened, which I've never seen before. About 1,100 homes or structures burnt down, and there was a lot of underinsured and uninsured properties. And so they made a decision, the county made a decision to roll back the code to 1997. Okay? So, in one hand, it helps those people, but for the people that had the code coverage, the insurance company got to keep the money. So it's a win for the insurance company. So that's a problem. I'm just sharing it because I hope that doesn't happen here. For those of you that have code coverage, so it's an opportunity to get the building up to Title 24, seismic retrofitting, whatever the code compliance is.
Before we go to the next step, let's get
Yeah,
the
let's answer the question,
questions.
then we're going to talk about debris removal. Yes. Who's got
Reno,
the mic?
before we get into the questions, can you guys talk a little bit about what it takes to actually get these monies in the policy? Do I have to prove my losses, or is it just enough to have the coverage?
No, so first of all, even if you don't rebuild, you still have to document that you have a building reconstruction loss that's in excess of $400,000. And by the way, it doesn't mean you get that automatically. In California, the law says that when a building is a total loss, the actual cash value, which is what you're initially owed, can be determined to be market value, what a willing buyer and seller would offer for your home right before the fire occurred and without the land. So some carriers are going out and getting appraisals, market value. So for example, if your home, you may have $400,000 of coverage, and it may cost more than $400,000 to rebuild. But if the market value without the land for your home is $325,000, technically that's all the carrier owes you right now for your building. They pay the difference when you go out and either replace or rebuild. Now that description I just gave you is just based on the $400,000 of coverage. If you have what's called extended replacement costs, that gives you an extra, in this example, $200,000. You would then need to document that to rebuild your home the way it was, it's now going to cost you more than $600,000. And you'll get that extra $200,000 when you either rebuild or you buy a home. And if you buy a piece of property and you pay $600,000 for it with the land, it doesn't mean you get that extra $200,000. Whatever property you buy, you have to minus the land value. Because remember, they're only insuring you for the improvements. So if you decide to opt the replacement, purchase another home, you just need to make sure that if it's agreed that they owe you $600,000 to rebuild your dwelling, you have to show that you expend that. If you expend without the land, that property you buy is only $500,000. They'd owe you another $100,000, but you could also decide this house doesn't reflect what I had. The kitchen is old. You could go ahead and put another $100,000 into that property, and now you've proved to the insurance company that you spent $600,000, the agreed amount, in the improvements based on the purchase of the property and the remodeling. Does that make sense?
Okay, we're gonna answer some questions. Go ahead.
The question, when you don't have a full loss, you've got your home, you
Partial
lost
loss.
out buildings. I think it's obvious, but I'd like you to clarify. Other structures is only covered at 10%. There's no replacement cost coverage. There's no additional declared catastrophe, et cetera. I'm with Safeco.
There could be, Safeco may have that endorsement that kicks your other structures coverage up another 50%. So you have to look at it.
Reno, I think the Safeco, they have a 50% for the building. It typically does not apply to other structures.
I've seen some with.
Okay.
on A, B, C, and D. But
Okay.
that was nationwide. So you look at the copy of the policy, and, yeah, that's your rule book. If you don't have the rule book, you're not in the game.
Yeah.
Because you can't negotiate with an insurance adjuster that has the rule book, and you don't. Because they're gonna be citing certain parts of the policy when you're trying to negotiate, they're saying section 2, subparagraph 3 says blah, 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 and you can't verify it. So always ask them, show me in the policy where it says that. Show me. Question here, and then we'll get over there.
How does this all work with somebody that has a condo that, burnt completely down?
So you have to, how many people are in the condo association? How many?
One.
Just one?
Oh, you mean how many were living in the individual?
No, the condominium that you're part of.
40.
40, okay. So you have to find out, obviously the condominium association has insurance. And many times they insure everything, or they insure the common walls or the roof. So first find out what they insure. They may insure everything. Do you know who the association's with? Is it?
Entwood Properties or something. It's,
But do you know who the insurance carrier is on the building?
oh, the insurance company for them?
Yes.
I'm not sure. There's a meeting tomorrow, Thursday that we're going to go to.
Find that out, find
master
out whether
policy,
they,
right?
under that master policy, do they insure everything? And by the way, it may be that unit owners are responsible for certain things, but when it comes to an insurance policy, and when you have a major catastrophe, it may be that the association's responsible for insuring everything, or everything in your unit with the exception of paint and carpeting.
Yeah, that's what they said. From the paint in it's my mom, my 88-year-old mom. From the paint inward is hers, and she does have insurance on that.
Good.
But, it's not a lot.
So get the CC&Rs, the condo docs, right? And the master policy, and that'll, talk about who's insured for what. Questions? Follow the mic? Okay, we're gonna get the mic over to you, sir.
The understanding of this base limit and extended replacement cost, my understanding is that the base limit is to get the similar size of the house, similar quality of the house. And then because of the, old house that you will get, and then, the remodel, or because that the Chico's, housing cost, goes up after, went up after the fire, then you can prove that this is, the 50%, 40% or 50%, went up, that the actual price. So I can claim that's the reason that, I want to get that the replacement cost. Is that the right way to understand?
Yeah.
If, I want to make sure I'm clear. Are you talking real estate value versus replacement cost value?
Yes.
Okay, I want to clarify a big myth. So in our world, in the insurance world, real estate value and replacement cost values are two separate worlds, and here's how to look at it. If you were to buy a Victorian in San Francisco, with all the gingerbread, lath and plaster, full dimensional framing, let's for example say that it costs $2 million to buy that Victorian. And you have to insure it now. And if that burnt to the ground for catastrophic loss, you'd probably need $4 million to replace it. So you would buy a $4 million policy because it's got all that old world construction, all the expensive stuff. So real estate values and replacement cost values are different. I just wanted to clarify that.
I think what's important, Reno, is that everyone needs to understand that no matter what, you have to determine what is the reproduction cost, the cost to rebuild my property in today's market, and probably a year from now, by the way, and things are going to continue to escalate. But what is it that they owe me? And then once you determine that, that's going to really determine whether you're going to need that extra 50%. Or if you're way above that, then you're going to get the $600,000. You just have to show you expended it, either by rebuilding or replacing.
We have a question here? Yes, sir.
Yes. My question, I have a comment about debris removal
Yep,
and a question about landscaping. I talked to someone at the Sears Center from CAL FIRE. As how did they handle debris removal? And you had to sign a paper that they have permission to come onto your property, and they'll do it free gratis. They made contracts with agencies and to take it away. However, they will take away everything. Your foundation, they'll literally clear your lot to bare dirt. That's how it's going to, at least that's how it worked at the CAL FIRE. That's what he said.
Okay, we're going to talk about that.
And in Santa Rosa as well.
Yep, we'll talk about debris removal next. It's a hot topic.
And the landscaping, if you know rebuild, I would like to use some of that pot to make my lot look, even though I don't want to live on it, to rebuild it to.
You can do that.
You can do that.
Yeah, you can move the money around any which way you want. You can. You can take some of your contents money, move it into your building if you want to build there. It's your money to do what you want with. So let's talk about debris removal. And then we're going to, we've got one question here and then there, and then we want to jump into debris removal. Yes?
So we just got done doing a walkthrough with one of our insurance people up at the property site. And it's kind of about opening that door on the base limit that you talked about. He kept repeating over and over again, we don't want to get there, we don't want to get there. And I kept asking the question of, well, that doesn't make sense to me because if we don't get there, then the 50% never gets utilized.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm understanding that.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other part is, we are going to do option number 2, I guess it is, purchase replacement property down here. We are going to, for lack of a better word, combine with my mother-in-law because her place burnt down as well. She's 87. She's now going to live with us.
Okay.
Should we let the insurance companies know that's going to happen, or should we keep these things separate and kind of not say anything to them, and then combine it afterwards, or do they need to know that?
Well, the property the home you're gonna buy, is your mother-in-law's home with the same carrier?
Yes, AAA.
Okay. Are you going to expend the monies that your mom has available under her policy and the monies you have available under yours and get a much bigger home?
Bigger, yeah, not much bigger, but yeah, we both owe mortgages, so once we get the payout or whatever, we'll pay off the 2 mortgages, and then whatever equity we have in that will go towards the new house.
But, I mean, there are different options. If it ends up that without the land, the home you're buying is equivalent to, I'm assuming it's AAA, by the way, or so if it's equivalent to 150%, then you've expended the money and your mom's policy didn't have to come into play. So if that's the case, maybe your mom decides to buy a piece of property to collect that extra 50% and then rents it out later on. Or sells it.
Yeah.
So to me, if I was in your shoes, I'd take advantage of that extra 50%. And if you've got enough to get your 50% and there's all this money left over on your mom's policy, have her go out and buy a piece of property.
I see. So, I mean, how do you dictate, because this guy's doing all the measurements on the property site, he's going to come up with a number through a program that he plugs all this stuff into, and say he comes up with, rebuild your house is $200,000 when our policy limit is $260 something. Does that mean I have to go to a builder and say, I want you to put this together and dispute that fact? So
Absolutely.
that's kind of up to us to dispute that.
Yeah,
then,
you're
huh?
making a claim to them. They don't have
Okay.
any obligation to be accurate. There's
So
no
they could
law.
lowball us and we have to prove them wrong.
Yes, that's
Okay.
the cat and mouse game, unfortunately.
I don't think they maliciously do it.
Right.
But you've got to educate them. And they're
We're gonna get the
swamped,
mic.
they're over-inundated with claims. It's a
All right,
process.
we got some questions coming up, and then we're going to talk about debris removal. Yes.
I've got AAA. Whoa.
That's a live one. It's a live one.
I don't
Okay.
need one anyway. I've got AAA, and they've already dispersed checks for 50% of the dwelling, coverage A, 50% of the lot, or the personal property. My question is, what the hell do I do with a check for a dwelling that I can't bill for 2 or 3 years, if ever? And especially so because I have a mortgage on the property, and my mortgage company's name's on that check.
Right.
So what I was told to do is send them the check, and then I don't know where it goes from there. Do I pay off my mortgage? Do they keep the check?
All right, I'll talk about it right now. So how many people here have a mortgage? Hands? Okay, it's a lot. So you got to call the first step, call the loss draft department, LOS as in Sam, S, loss draft department. Each mortgage company has a little department in the back that processes settlement checks for fires, floods, earthquakes, hell and brimstone, okay, whatever's coming in. So their job is to take that check and process it, and the way it works is you have to ask the lost draft department, what is the protocol, if I choose to rebuild, what is the protocol for you to release the money back to me so I can start my rebuild? And what they'll do is they'll send you usually a package, and they're going to need some information filled out so that you're proactively going to have a file set up at that department, the lost draft department. So when the check comes in, you're going to sign it, endorse it, send it to them. They look at the check, they look at the file, everything's filled out. They put the check into a non-bearing escrow account. Okay, and then it sits there. If you have a mortgage on the dwelling, yeah, this is on the dwelling, of course, the check on the dwelling. And then they'll start dispersing it to you to start the rebuild, and usually it's in thirds. Okay, so if you have a $300,000 check, they'll give you $100 grand. You start the process. Once you exhaust that, you call them up. They're going to say, I need another draw of money. They'll send out some representatives to make sure you're spending the money on the project and not buying a car with it or going to Vegas or something crazy that may happen. And then they'll release another draw. Okay, so if you value engineer, let's say you have $300,000 and you only spend $250 because you value engineered the property and you got a great deal with your contractor, that $50 grand you can either pay down the note or they cut you the check. Okay, so that's kind of the scenario when you have a mortgage. And they have an insurable interest in the property. They lent you the money to buy it. They only have an insurable interest up to the amount of the note. So if you have a $500,000 settlement and you only owe $300,000, okay, that $200,000, they have no insurable interest in it or control in it. So the check comes in. Look, you can request the carrier to cut 2 checks, but you're asking them to step outside the policy. One for $300,000 with your name on it and their name, and that goes to them and they hold it. The other $200,000 is liquid money, cash. That's your money. But most carriers won't do it, so you'll call Lost Draft and have them issue you the difference back. They shouldn't be holding on to money that they don't have an insurable interest in. Does that make sense?
So the question is, do I continue to pay my mortgage payment?
Yeah, you have to pay your mortgage.
I've been holding a $200,000 check for 3 years with no.
That's right. If you're not going to rebuild and you're going to run and take the money and run, then you're going to pay off the note. Yeah. If you're going to go purchase a replacement property, you're going to pay off the note. Yeah. If you're going to rebuild on site, then they're going to hold it.
If you're planning to rebuild, you do not want to pay off your note.
Right.
Because then you're going to have to go out and get a loan, what's called, of course, a construction loan. It's a much higher rate. Rates have gone way up over the last 2 years. So if you've got a good low rate and you're intending to rebuild there, just continue paying the mortgage.
We're going to talk about debris removal. We'll get to that. We got questions, though. Yes.
What recourse does one have if your insurance company says your base limit is $400,000 as you have up there, based on $175 per square foot to rebuild? And I know for a fact that just to do an add-on a few years ago was $350 a square foot. Mm-hmm. So, which really puts it up to double, They're willing to pay off the $400 right now, but if it in fact costs double that to replace your home, what recourse do you have to dispute that? How would you move? Our adjuster keeps saying, well, that's the policy limit and that's all we can do, kind of thing.
Yeah, so if you have a shortfall, let's say you have a $700,000 loss and you only have $500,000, is that the question? How do I get the other $200,000? Is that what your question is?
Well, I mean, had I sold the home intact for $400,000, we would have been happy, for example. But now that you're talking about replacing it at current costs, that's where the issue is.
But if you think about it, and by the way, if you're underinsured and you're not going to build a home here for $175 a square foot, forget it. Right. If you could before, it's not going to happen now, unless it's a manufactured home. But if they're paying you your limit, and obviously you're underinsured, if the house with the land was only worth $400,000 anyway, you're breaking even. And you're getting to keep the land, which is going to be worth some money at a future date.
Any other questions? Well, we got one down here, Kyle. Debris removal, we're going to get to that. It kills me. I got to talk about debris removal. Yes, oh, right here.
You mentioned that it's up to the local entities whether they go down to a code level from 1997, for instance, in Reading. In this case, this fire was in one town, Town of Paradise, and the County of Butte. So both would have to agree with that, or can it vary from throughout the fire?
Great question. I have no answer for that. I don't know, because that's a governmental, it's a county issue. They're going to make that decision based on the stats, and that's beyond, yeah. You'll know. They're going to roll it out. Another question, then I'm going into that debris removal.
Yeah, the 400,000 doesn't include the land, correct?
That's correct. Correct. So debris removal, hot topic. Here's how it works. In Santa Rosa, because of the magnitude of it, I think there's some like 5,000 structures. They brought in the Army Corps of Engineers. In some of these other firestorms we've seen, it was Cal Recycle. Could be a combination of both. We don't know yet what the rollout program is, but typically here's how it works. You're going to sign up. I would encourage you to sign up, because based on the numbers we're seeing, doing it privately would end up costing you a lot more. So you sign up for the program. They come onto the lot. You're going to sign a hold harmless agreement that basically if they damage your septic system, they're not responsible for it. So definitely want to be there when they're there working, okay? They're bulls in a china closet. They want to get in and out and move on to the next one. It's a big job. So you'll sign up for the program. They'll usually come out in two phases. First phase is they'll remove propane tanks, car batteries, paint cans, things that they can see that's hazmat, and they haul that off. Then the big trucks come in. The bulldozers come in with the dumpsters and everything, and they rip out everything, put it in the truck, and off they go. And so those bills are going to be pretty high. And typically, an average 15, 16, 1,700 square foot house bill could be 60, 70,000. Okay? Yeah, I know. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot me.
But you're not going to end up paying for that.
Right. Thanks.
That's important.
My safety net. Thank you, Kenny. So what happens is the bill comes in. Let's say it's 75,000, and you only have 20,000. They're going to go to the policy. They'll pull out the 20,000, and the balance gets paid by the state or federal government. That's how it works. Okay? Now, for those of you who are farmers, and I've seen a lot of this, they're paying you that debris removal. Some companies are giving you the money now. Earmark it. Put it in a separate account and let it sit there, because when that bill comes in and they go send the bill to your insurance company, and the insurance company says, hey, I paid the insured. Go after the insured. They're going to be knocking on your door for that money. You'll have it. So earmark it.
Keep a copy of your statement of loss that farmers will normally give you, or whomever, and it will outline whether they paid the debris removal or not. And in fact, when you sign up for this program, they'll ask you at some point in time later on, when the bill comes, to, please send us your statement of loss, or what was paid out in debris removal. Because you have to show to them what was paid out or not paid out.
Here's the caveat. They're going to dig down and take out the foundation, et cetera, and what's left is a little bit of a hole, 6, 8 inches maybe.
It depends on the amount that they have to remove. What happens is they certify your lot that it's free and clear of hazardous material. In order to do that, they'll remove the first 2 inches. They'll come in, they'll test the soil. If hazmat shows up, they'll remove another 2 inches. Just be aware that depending on what happens, they may remove 6 inches of dirt. And if you're State Farm, like we had in Cobb and in Lake County, State Farm said, well, we don't owe to put back new dirt. And they don't under their policy. It's not a major ordeal, but just be aware of it. I think what's most important is that before they come out to do the debris removal, and they'll usually call you and give you a 24 or 48-hour notice, you should flag the areas where your septic tank is, where your leach lines are. If you've got a really expensive driveway, cobblestone, and it's not damaged, maybe put some plywood over it. They're only going to remove your main building and maybe any detached structures. The walkways, the pools, they're going to, retaining walls, they typically won't remove them. And if you're on a hillside, you don't want them removing the retaining walls.
Questions on debris removal? We've got the mics coming around. Hold on, we've got a mic coming around. Wait for the mic, please.
What about destroyed vehicles?
Isn't that the insurance, that's the auto companies? I don't know, that's a good question. When you sign up for the program, ask them. Because I don't know if that's gonna go to some metal company, for salvage. Your auto policy has some kind
Yeah,
of,
when you report your loss to the auto company, they typically will get a hold of someone to remove it.
Right.
It's not typically part of FEMA.
Where does the car go? If CHP's taking the car, where's it go?
I didn't hear that.
I don't.
Yeah.
Is it sitting on your property, the vehicle, and it's destroyed? The auto policy should be able, they'll usually come and take it out. Yes, hi.
I have a Ameriprise auto policy, and I have a vehicle sitting out in one of my homes that looks like it's destroyed on the drone aerial imagery. Anyway, so I filed a claim, and the insurance told me to contact FEMA, that FEMA would remove it. So I go to the Disaster Preparedness Center, I go to FEMA, they said, oh, we don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Go to the EPA, to the debris removal people, so I go over there.
They're doing this?
Yeah, and they said, well, that might depend on how close it was to the structure. If it was right in front of the structure, by the structure, then they'll probably remove it, debris removal. If it's like 100 feet away from the structure, then they may not remove it. It's something that's kind of like, has to be,
I think it's
they
too
said,
soon.
we'll know later.
Yeah, I think it's too soon. They're roundtabling all this stuff now, because this is huge. So they're roundtabling it, they're coming up with some ideas, and they will roll it out eventually and give you what the options are and what's happening. Questions here and then there. Yes. I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
If you had an accident,
Large trees?
your car got towed.
Removal of large trees.
tow
For debris removal, if the tree is impinging or it's gonna collapse onto somebody that's working on the site, they'll knock it down and usually take it away, but otherwise they won't touch trees.
Kenny, do you want to talk about how debris removal works with trees? Where that
Yeah,
coverage comes from?
if the tree is in a state of imminent collapse, it's burned, it's unsafe, they will remove any trees that are near or on top of the house or could fall on the house, because they're concerned about their workers getting hurt. So typically, when the trees badly burn and it could potentially fall, they will remove those trees, but only if it's going to fall on top of where the workers are working. They won't remove trees on a 3 or 5 acre site that are burned and may fall if it has nothing to do with the area of the dwelling.
Questions? We got one back here, and we got a mic down there.
We have
Yes,
one
hi.
here.
Yes, hi.
So if they take the soil around from where the house was, do you have like a toxologist test your soil in other places of your property? Because if you had fruit trees and all of that, how do I know the soil beyond the house isn't toxic?
Don't know. This clearance certificate typically gets done from the site dig, but if you have an acre of land and you've got other, you might want to talk about to the debris removal companies or whomever at the state and county level are of how the testing's going to roll out. We haven't heard anything yet, so it's in flux. So find out how far out do you test. I would be very concerned about contaminants.
But, but be aware the insurance company doesn't owe to remove the contaminated soil outside of your home. In fact, they probably don't even owe for it in your home. This is just a benefit by using the FEMA, because they don't insure for land. Now, if you had a commercial policy, some of them will have like an extra $5,000 or $10,000 of pollutants to the land due to water or fire debris.
Okay, we got a question in the back?
Yes, I talked with a man that had an incident in 2008 with a fire, and he said that he had the state come in and actually remove, the debris from him, and then the neighbor next to him had a private contractor doing it, and he said he wished he had the private contractor do it because of the way they cleaned it up. FEMA or whoever did it left it a mess, and it still cost about $60,000 to $80,000 to get his property sellable and rebuildable.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. You do have more control when you have it done privately, but I gotta tell you, it's gonna cost you money. Because if you only have 20,000 and the person's gonna charge 50,000, it's gonna come out of that 30,000 you're responsible for. So again, if you're on the property, it's your property, so it's important for you to be there during this removal process. We need a mic down here. And, okay, hi, question.
This is about removing debris on rented property. My home was destroyed along with all the others in a mobile home park. And the owner of the mobile home park is calling for a meeting on the 12th of this month at Logan's. And I strongly suspect that he's going to tack something on, and I'm thinking maybe it might be debris removal. Can he do that?
Can he charge you like a special assessment fee for debris removal? Yes. Anybody can do anything they want, but can they get away with it? That's the bottom line. Find out at the meeting what's happening. I mean, that kind of goes back to anybody can really do anything they want, but is it within the guidelines of the law? That's a legal question. We're not attorneys, but that's a good question. Yes, hi.
Hi, we've got about 3/4 of an acre, and on that we have about 35 to 50 trees. Now, will we be responsible for those trees in the future if we don't rebuild and we move somewhere else?
Yes. Yeah.
What do we have? We only have $20,000 for that?
In this example, you have 5% for landscaping on top of the whatever base limit you have.
Yeah.
So we add 5%, and that's the max that you can collect. I mean, again, what you do with your money is up to you, but when we're talking about the policy,
yeah,
you can take whatever money out of that policy and use it. But the policy only provides, in this example, $20,000 for landscaping.
So in the future, let's say that one of those trees falls down on somebody else who rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
Am I responsible for that?
Again, that's a legal question. I would think you're liable at some point. Yeah, Kyle?
I was just going to suggest it depends on whether you still own the land.
Yeah.
So, but as the landowner, you're responsible for the land. And that brings up an important thing worth noting for everybody in here is you want to make sure you keep your policies in play because you want the liability insurance right now.
Good point.
As long as you still own that piece of dirt and until you've figured out what direction you're going to go, you want to make sure that you've protected yourselves, especially with all those perils on your property.
Yes. Hi.
This may have already been answered, but in regards to the debris removal, I live on a street that kind of has a slope. So, for instance, if I get my place, the debris is gone, it's no longer toxic. What about the places up the street where the water runs down on my property and recontaminate?
Right, so that's why they want you to sign up for the program, because they're going to go systematically right down the street. So that's how they do it, so the whole area. When there's a problem is when your neighbor's doing it privately and you got your lot clean, and they're still sitting on it 2 years later, and it's all, so that's when more than likely the county will step in and say, hey, better clean it, or you're going to get a fine, because it's going to contaminate your lot and cause you some issues. Yes?
Yeah, my policy lumped two together. They have code upgrades and debris removal all in the same category. So how do I know what to do as far as if FEMA's going to match that or actually cover the rest? They could eat up one, then the next thing you know, I have no, nothing for code.
They're two separate coverages.
Well, I looked. That's
Kyle?
So the spirit behind the program is so that having the debris removal done by the county or by the state or run through the federal program, it's designed to make it so that it won't be impactful in a negative way on your financial recovery.
Right.
So if you indeed have both of those encompassed under the same bucket, you would have the right to use the monies needed for your project before the government program would have the rights to those monies to cover for the debris removal. So it's not punitive on your building budget.
But it's not one and the same, it's two separate coverages.
But he's saying they're together. If they're together, that's the way the
If building's 3 years down the road and they remove this amount of debris, it eats up all the money that I've done for code upgrades.
Well, it doesn't make sense. I'd have to look at that policy, but what you need to share with the debris removal company is this money is for code upgrades. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with measuring the code upgrades now. And if Horace Mann is in agreement that the code upgrades are going to exhaust that coverage, which happens to be both for debris removal and code upgrades, then nothing goes to the debris removal company, because you're entitled to collect the monies you need first to rebuild the property. Okay?
We have a couple of questions pending. Yes.
So my family and I live on a couple hundred acres in Yankee Hill, and we lost our home. But when I think of debris removal, besides just the home, we have massive fire breaks running through the property. So there's huge piles of trees and mud, and it's like 4-lane freeways going through our property everywhere and into streams. And is that our responsibility? Like, I don't see that anywhere in this. Like, how do we clean that up?
So debris removal is for you, your contract pays for the dwelling, other structures, personal property, and loss of use, period. That's what it does. They don't insure land other than landscaping. So if you exhaust that landscaping for, the debris removal, the rest of the 200 acres is on your dime. Whatever, it's nice to have land, but it comes out.
Yeah. So my recommendation is go ahead, get a hold of a tree company, have them give you a quote to remove all that. Obviously, it's going to be way over your limit.
Right.
Go to FEMA. I know that FEMA is giving out loans, both residential and commercial. I think it's limited to $200,000 on residential. But show to them that you have uninsurable losses and see if they'll give you a low interest loan. I think I've heard something like 2% or less. Yeah, 2%. That's what I would do.
We got some questions here, and then we'll swing around. Did you have a question back there?
Okay. I just comment on this. So, but this work on your property was done to be firefighting efforts. Is that something that triggers an insurance claim, or doesn't the government have to step in? And
I don't know. That's a government crisis. So you got to go down to the FEMA.
And then on
these
the
are good
question,
questions. Go ahead.
The question of replacement costs. So we are hearing $175 a foot. In the Bay Area, Napa, and so forth, 800 plus
Sure, right.
square foot.
That's right.
Can you give us some guidance of where that might be in a year or something? Average home and maybe a quality,
Sure.
more custom home.
Okay. We're talking about a demand surge without saying the word demand surge. So there's a real thing called demand surge. It happens in all these firestorms where there's a lack of labor, there's a lack of materials, contractors, so the price per square foot goes crazy. And it's hard to just throw a dart and say it's going to cost here $250 a square foot, because your home may be different than your neighbor's. You could have had an opulent home and it cost $300-400 a square foot to rebuild, and your neighbor could be a modest home for $180 a square foot. So it's really hard to just throw a dart and say it's this. So the demand surge issue is not covered under a policy, right?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, well, let's talk about it.
So most of the carriers in Santa Rosa, when evaluating the losses, didn't value the losses. They tried to initially based on what it would cost a minute before the fire. They use a program called Xactimate. It goes up every quarter. The different contractors that do insurance-related work, and I bring that up because the fact is you're going to have contractors that don't, but the ones that do, they report into Xactimate, and when there's demand surge situations where the cost of reconstruction is much higher, it goes to Xactimate, and they increase the rates. But it's never reality. In Santa Rosa, we factored in demand surge. I gotta believe that with 13,000 homes, everything's gonna go up. Where are they gonna get the contractors? Where are they gonna house them? They're gonna be coming from Sacramento. And then, all of a sudden you got a couple thousand homes being built. I mean, not everyone's gonna rebuild, but a fair amount of them will. And a lot of people are gonna wait. They're gonna wait for the next year to see what's happening. What's going to happen to the infrastructure? What if FEMA comes in here and they say, hey, we're going to pour a lot of money into the town. We're going to get a sewer system set up. It's going to attract more businesses. So I think no matter what, there's going to be demand surge. And in Santa Rosa, many of the carriers reluctantly factored it in somehow or another.
And just to give you an idea, it's somewhere between 24 and 35%.
Yeah.
Well, somewhere around there was the average.
20 to
demand.
35%.
Yeah, was the demand surge. So it's real, but what I'm saying earlier was there's not a line item in the policy.
Oh, no,
That's what I was talking about.
There's nothing in the policy. They just owe what it would cost to replace like kind and quality. Some carriers, once in a great while, will take, well, we only owe at the date of loss, but all the carriers factored it in. And here's what you want to do. Whatever they come up with now, it doesn't mean that's what you're going to get it done for in a year from now.
Right.
So we factor in contingency fees, which is important. You want to go back, if it takes a year, year and a half before you can start reconstruction, you want to have that whole estimate reevaluated. Because it could be a year from now that construction costs are 10 or 20% higher.
Want to keep moving here. If you purchase a replacement property, a property that's already built, here's the scenario. You can qualify for your extended replacement cost here. Okay, you give up the code coverage because the code is only is available here if you rebuild on the site. Use it or lose it on that bucket. Everything else remains the same. This is the unknown. We don't know if you have this or not in the policy, which is the endorsement that kicks up bucket A, B, C, and D. If you rebuild on site, this is what's qualified for. So those are your three scenarios you're going to fall into. Any questions? We got a mic coming over. We got 2 questions.
Reno.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
If we were to hire your company to help us, how do you base your fees?
Okay. Our baskets are pretty full, and it'd be ludicrous for me to say we can handle all these losses. What we're doing, this is our way of giving back to the community. We work on a contingency fee. It has to make sense not only to us to get involved, but it also has to make sense to the client. We want to add value to the process. And what does that mean? How can we make an impact where it doesn't impact you negatively? So we're offering all our knowledge to you guys so you can help yourselves through it. So what I would recommend is call in, and we're getting calls every single day, many, many calls. And we can either talk over the phone about it. A lot of people will PDF or send us the policy. We do a policy review on the phone, or we can sit down with you. I think over the phone we can kind of get a good sense for where you're at and where you need to be. And we're not just taking claims to take claims. We need to add value to the process. So that's what I would recommend. So we work on a contingency fee if it makes sense. We work on 10 cents on the dollar, 10% of the net collectible, what we're able to collect. You've got 4 buckets, A, B, C, and D. We work on a fee on all 3, the A, B, C, and C, but not D on the loss of use, if we get involved. But for tonight, we just want to, again, just give you information to help yourselves first. So that's what I would recommend, is call. All our information's there. Call into the office, and one of us 4 will get that, and we'll have a conversation and follow-up appointment.
And we'll be here after the meeting, too. With
Yeah,
any
to answer questions. We're going to hang around till we're done completely. Yes, sir.
If I plan to rebuild on site, what dictates the kind of home or type of home I can build?
Build whatever you want.
Whatever we want.
Could put in gold doorknobs and make it smaller.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. It's your money.
Gold doorknobs and make it smaller if you want.
We have a question down here. Anybody else? 2 questions down here. We're going to work our way down.
When does depreciation come into effect?
Great
when they're
question.
valuing your property?
Great question. So the key to this whole thing is putting the insurance company on the hook for the replacement cost value. That's the bottom line here. And then it's subject to depreciation for wear and tear, age, condition, obsolescence. That drives that replacement cost number down to what's called the actual cash value. Okay, depreciation is negotiable, it's subjective. and they can only depreciate on your building certain components. They can't depreciate like framing. That can last hundreds of years. We know that. There are buildings out here that old. Electrical, you can get 70, 80 years out of that. What they can depreciate, though, and they cannot depreciate labor, by the way, they can depreciate paint, wall-to-wall carpeting, things that have normal wear and tear, those types of things. So does that answer your question with depreciation? Yeah, so you got to remember, put them on the hook for the true replacement cost value. Now, don't just stop at the limit, folks. Okay, if you have an $800,000 loss and you only have $500,000, measure the loss for the $800,000. It's because you may have a secondary means of recovery. Okay, so again, you want to max out your policy by measuring your loss truly for what it is. Don't just stop at that limit. Okay, you want to know, what is it that I lost? It's really critical.
And I was going to just say, I talked earlier about market value. A lot of the carriers, because they want to get monies out or they don't want to spend the money for an appraisal, some of the carriers are writing estimates based on what they think the replacement cost would be, and then they apply a small amount for depreciation, because typically when you're only depreciating paint, flooring, appliances, roofing, and it's only the material component, it usually ends up being around 10%. And sometimes you can get to your limits that way.
Yeah, where depreciation is critical, and we'll get to that next, is
Personal
in
property.
Personal property. Do we have any other questions? Have another one here, here, and there. Okay, well,
Okay, I'm a little, go back to the beginning here. I think I might have missed something, but the base limit, what is that based on?
your
My
policy
house-
limit, your policy-based limit.
My house is insured for $750,000.
That's your base limit, right?
Okay, that's
That's
what
what it says. Now, you may have more than that if you can exceed that 750.
Okay, now the other structures, debris, everything else that's there, that comes above that 750,000.
That's correct, but the only way those doors open up is to exceed, get them to, you got to exceed that limit.
Okay.
Then those doors open up to that extra money. Question here, yes.
So on the depreciation or the value of what you're trying to replace, like if it's a countertop or an appliance, I keep hearing language like similar or like is like, or
Yep.
what does all that mean? And how do I say, no, that stove, to replace it costs $500?
So your policy will either say like, kind, and quality or functional equivalence. Okay, there's a difference. And again, if you get that policy, you'll see that language. Functional equivalence means, here's an example. You have a lath and plaster wall, well, they can pay you for sheetrock, even though lath and plaster is twice the money. Because you lost a wall, we're giving you a wall that's functionally equivalent. Like, kind, and quality means you owe me for a plaster wall. I lost plaster, you owe me for plaster. So it's really important to look at how the valuations are going to, does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
Yes, question.
Is any of this money taxable? Say you don't replace it, you just get in the motorhome and go.
Cash out? Well, I was with an accountant today who had we're not CPAs. My understanding is that if you take the dwelling money, I think you had a couple of years. Do you remember that conversation? 2 years, yeah. If you don't rebuild or rebuild a like kind, so commercial for commercial, residential for residential, then there's a cap gain. 4 years for commercial? For the cap gain? 4 years. Talk to
Is
your
that
accountant.
residential and commercial?
Yeah, we were talking with somebody today who's an accountant. Talk to your accountant. The tax laws have changed recently, but it's typically not a non-taxable event because it's a loss. You lose $1, you got $1, it's a wash. Unless, again, on the dwelling, you just cash out and rent a bungalow down in San Luis Obispo for the rest of your years, watch the ocean. So then it may be a taxable event for the dwelling. Okay, but talk to an accountant about that.
We're
we're moving. Okay, we got to
move on.
Okay, so coverage B. This is a quick one, and then we'll talk about personal property. Coverage B, again, that 40,000 was 10%. Some policies offer 20%, and that covers garages, workshops, detached fencing, retaining walls, anything unattached to your dwelling. Okay, if there's a fence attached to your dwelling, it becomes part of the dwelling. Okay, if you have a a cabana, a workshop, anything detached is covered under this. Typically, we see this bucket is typically underinsured out here. These rural areas, people have nice workshops, and they build out these other structures. Landscape walkways, driveways, patios, all that falls under other structures. So here's your base limit. You may have extended replacement cost if you have that policy that offers that. Debris removal, yeah. You've got 5% of the 40 for debris removal, because your debris field is not just the building. It's contents, it's the dwelling, it's other structures, okay? So you've got some coverage there for debris removal. And you may be able to collect maybe some code upgrade, so you got to look for that. And Kenny, I forgot, how does that work with the code under other structures?
It depends on the policy. AAA's got a unique policy. It does give you code up, well, I should say AAA has that 50% extended replacement.
On other structures?
On other structures, but only if it's an actual structure.
Oh, okay.
Not walkways and landscaping. And some policies do provide code upgrade coverage under other structures. It's limited, but some of them do.
Again, it'll be in there, in your policy. Yes, question?
Yeah, we have like a pole barn carport type of thing that's movable. Is that considered another structure or personal property?
And you can pick it up and move it somewhere else?
Yeah, it's one of those ones that you buy to cover your RV.
Could be either or.
Yeah, yeah.
Could be
In
either.
fact, we were going to talk, we might as well talk about it. So, if you're, and what Reno said is true, a lot of people have these outbuildings, these big sheds, and they're going to max out, especially if you've got a pool. You're going to end up exhausting those limits. So what you want to do is move things over. So, for example, if you had a well, could be a separate structure, but it could really be part of the dwelling. It's used to service the dwelling. If you have a septic system, it's used to service the dwelling. So it's kind of a gray area, some of these wells, septic systems, and many times we've argued to put them under the dwelling when we realize there's going to be a shortfall under the other structures. Does that make sense?
Question?
Yeah, any others?
So I just spent $7,000 to put a new septic in. Can I put that on my personal property?
Nope, I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah, don't shoot the messenger. No, because it's part of it's part of the structure, so to speak, because it's tied into the building. Yeah. It's servicing the building.
You don't take it with you. I don't want to be around you when you do.
That could be messy. Okay, any questions on coverage B? It's really an easy bucket. It's quick, typically pretty painless. Okay, here's the pain. Personal property. This will take years off your life. Okay, this bucket is, whether we're handling a claim, it is our most taxing department. It takes 4 to 6 people full-time to capture it and done right. Kenny will pass around what a personal property claim looks like and should look like. So in this example, you've got $300,000 as a limit on personal property. That's your base limit. Then you've got things called sublimits, business personal property. How many people here have business personal property in their house? Okay. There's a limit on it, just so you know, because they want you to buy more insurance to protect that business personal property. It's usually somewhere around $1,500. Some are up to $5,000. So when you're making your list of personal property, make sure you separate out the business personal property, because it will be subject to a limit. And for those of you that have 5 iPads and multiple computers, but you use a couple of them for business, you kind of prorate and say, look, 50% of it's used for personal, 50% goes in the personal property column. But understand that there is limits. Sublimits on watercraft, cash, of course, is a limitation. For those of you that have guns and gun safes, see a lot of that up here. There's language in these policies that talk about cash, credit cards, silverware, and these special limits that typically only applies to theft. Okay, they hate theft claims. They hate them because they're hard to prove. So they limit the amount of money they're exposed to have to pay. So, but in a fire, it's just part of the personal property amount, the whole, in this example, that. Okay, so don't let an adjuster tell you that, oh, sorry, your guns are limited to $1,000. Question it. Tell them to show you where it says that in a case of a fire loss. It's not a theft loss. So ACV versus RCV. ACV means actual cash value versus replacement cost. In this example, if you have $300,000, how do you walk away with $300,000? How do you get that from your policy? Well, you'd have to have a claim that's defendable above this. So for example, let's say you make your list, you price it out at today's replacement cost. It's not what you paid for it years ago on sale. It's what it costs today, plus tax, plus delivery, plus setup. That's a true picture of what you've lost. And let's, for example, say you make your list, you capture everything you can, and it comes up to $400,000. That's where the replacement cost is. Well, it's going to be subject to depreciation for wear and tear, age, condition, obsolescence, and that'll drive the number down. Remember that the insurance company knows, they know you're not going to replace every single thing you lost. They know that. That's a true statement. So what they do is they heavily depreciate your personal property because you're going to have to replace the item for them to give you the difference back. For example, you have a chair, you're claiming it for $100. This chair is $100. They agree, yeah, fine. How old is it? They'll say, it's 5 years old. And they'll look at their governmental depreciation scale and say, oh, a chair like that should last 10 years with normal use. You told me it's 5 years old. Well, I'll give you, here's $50 now. They've depreciated it 50%. Well, what happens to my other 50? Well, when you replace it, I'll give you the other 50. You don't want to get into that cat and mouse game. You'll lose. You will lose years off your life, trust me. So
By the way, interrupt. So statistically, most people only replace about a third of what they had.
Yep.
And the carriers know it. So you want to get the replacement dollars up way above and enough where even after 35, 40% or more depreciation's applied, you're still above your limit.
Right, so let's, again, 400, your list is 400,000. It's defendable, that's what the number is. And let's say they take $50,000 off. Now you're at 350,000. That 350 is higher than this. They commit and pay you. That's how it works. That's how you get your money. Okay, and it takes work. Richard, how do you look at this? He had a great, last week he made a great comment. You want to share that again?
Sure. So for most of you, for some of you, I've talked to you about this, but you have to change your mindset. I mean, truly change your mindset. Instead of looking at this as something that's completely overwhelming, because it is. But if I were to say to you, or I were to say to you, or you, if you had $300,000 in your coverage, and I said, I'll pay you $300,000 for 2 hours of work a night for the next 3 months, would you do it? Under any normal circumstance, would you do it? Of course you would. So if you turn this into a part-time job and you allocate a couple months, listen, don't feel rushed. You have time. And just because they want their answers now, you'll get it to them when you get it to them.
Right.
So just a way to change how you look at it.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, it's a great mindset. And that's how you can be as aggressive as you want, folks, but you got to defend it. You got to defend it. They're going to try to beat it up. They may have questions. It gets subject to audit. So once you submit it, the adjuster is nothing more than an information gatherer, and it goes upstairs to the guys in the glass office or the women, and they're the ones with the. They're trying to be politically correct here. And they'll scrutinize the high dollar items. They're going to look at $3,000, $5,000. Those get highlighted and kicked back downstairs, and they're going to try to find those items cheaper. Okay, so again, you can be as aggressive as you want, but you got to defend it ultimately. Yes.
My question is, how do they evaluate something that cannot be replaced, such as I had some Model T tools, Model B tools, can't replace them.
Are those two service?
Model T's, Model 32 quarters.
Well, you can get on an auction house like Sotheby's. That's what we do. We do. You have to do the research. Somebody has that tool somewhere on the planet, and you'll find it usually on eBay or some kind of site. You can find that. And you got to source it. So you'll see if you get a chance to look at our work product. Not only do you have to research what it costs today to replace. And then you have to show them where you're sourcing. That goes back to that lifestyle question. how do you shop? Do you go to Cabela's? Do you go to Target? Do you go to Macy's, Neiman Marcus? They're gonna wanna, you gotta show a narrative and show how it is that you live to substantiate your claim. Remember, the burden of proof, guys, is on you, not the insurance company. You're
Yeah.
making a claim to them.
If I may, due
Yeah.
to the time limit.
Yep.
So if you looked at and you should, by all means, look at our sample claims. We do need them back. But we source price anything above $200. The idea is to document what you're presenting. And it makes it a little bit easier on the other side. But here's the most important takeaway from this seminar. Depreciation used to be based on just age and useful life. Now it's based on use and condition. What the condition is at the time. That chair, for example, maybe has only been sat on 5 times. You know, if it's based on use and condition, maybe the depreciation's only 10%. A typical example is your spare bedrooms. Maybe the furniture's 20 years old, the mattress is 20 years old. You tell the insurance company that, they're going to depreciate it 80, 90, 100% because a mattress may only last 20 years, certainly by warranty. But if no one slept in that spare bedroom and it's only been used 5, 6 times over the last 20 years because your kids are gone, then the depreciation may only be 10% or less. And any clothes that you had that, even though they're 10 years old, but they've only worn on a few occasions, you need to point that out. So instead of depreciating at 50 or 70%, maybe it's only 10 or 15%. So that's the key, use and condition. And every item you list, especially the high value items, point out to them, hardly used. Formal living room versus a family room. Big difference in use and condition. A young family with lots of little rugrats running around, that sofa's not going to last a long time.
Got a question here? Yes.
I have 2 really quick ones. One is my policy says, or no, policy doesn't say, but somebody contacted me from State Farm and said, you only have 60 days to get this list. Can I ask, oh, sorry, thank you. Can I ask for longer? 60 days is.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're wanting to rush you into it.
Yeah, don't get buffaloed, guys. You don't have to use their program on the computer. Some people just aren't computer savvy. You can hand it in on a napkin. Okay?
Good to know.
Do it right. Take your time. You're the consumer. Okay? You're the consumer. You have rights. So don't. Yeah, that's malarkey. I just want to show you. Any other questions, real quick, before I get into
did
this?
have a
Right
second
here.
question.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead. Second question.
The second question was, so things, just to make sure I understand, things of value like art or rugs, if we can get an appraisal, even if it's damaged, if somebody, because how, again, do they depreciate that? Some things appreciate.
Artwork, antiques, collectibles don't depreciate, they appreciate.
And they're going to pay you the actual cash value. It's the fair market value of it. Yes.
AAA, I just spoke with them last night, and they said that we don't have to itemize everything, that they'll give us a list,
Right.
and then we just have to answer that on the list. Is that?
Yeah, that's called
categorical.
Thank you. Categorical. So some companies are allowing you to do categorical. If you can get to your limit through this categorical, great. But if it falls short after they do that, then I would go into the detailed list. That's the key. Sure. Yeah. Count everything. Toothpicks.
But there's a limit on gold coins and silver.
On a fire loss?
Yes, I've seen that.
On
It's
AAA?
typically, I don't know about AAA, but some of the carriers, they limit cash and they include gold
cash.
coins and silver.
And what is it? Metals, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be right with you. Yes, sir.
What about smoke damaged furniture? Can you get the smoke out of furniture?
Great question. If it was my home, I'd want it replaced because how do you clean the foam cushion? How do you clean the foam cushion in the back? They may be able to clean and deodorize that fabric on top, but what about all the rest of it? What about the framing? It's not finished, right? So it's absorbing that smoke. I would claim it as a total loss.
And what about the rotten food in refrigerators?
That's covered, yeah.
And the
Your
refrigerator
gone.
is history.
Don't open the refrigerator.
Yes. By the way, anyone whose home survived, don't open the refrigerator.
Yeah, you're going to get paid
Don't
to
open
replace
the
it.
freezer.
Do we have one more question, and we got another one there, and then we're going to keep moving forward. Yes. Go ahead.
So on the AAA categorical, you said if you can get to your limit is
Limit.
good, if not itemized? Are you
You
referring?
still have to itemize, right? But the goal is you want to get to that limit, right? That 300,000 in this case, or your limit. And if the categorical, which is faster, if that gets you there, then you're good, right? Because you got all your money. But if you fall short, even after doing the categorical, I would start doing the detail list to get that number up. Because the categorical, you may miss some stuff.
I think when you use the categorical, anything of real high value, separate out.
So this is what it looks like. We had a question here.
Say that the insurance company wants to give you 75% of your,
Contents limit, yeah?
can you still fight for the extra 25%?
Yeah.
Do you accept that?
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure it doesn't say final settlement. A lot of companies are coming up and saying, I'll give you 75% of your contents limit, and they're hoping you go away. And you know what? There's a few people that will go away, and the insurance company gets to keep it. It's a cat and mouse game. It's a strategy. They know what they're doing. Okay, so, and so they're going to make you work for the other 25%. But you have to calculate it from $1. Okay, that's how it works. So this is what it looks like really quick, a sample inventory. One column will be the quantity, right? And here's the key, the description. The more detailed the description is, the less leverage the insurance company has to argue. Kill them with details. That's what we do. Okay, so in this case, women's jeans by Ryder Vintage. It's not just one pair of women's jeans. Okay, Ryder's Vintage is the key there. Today's replacement cost, there's one, it's $100. There's one pair of them, it's $100. Where did you get the cost source? Macy's, in this example. Okay, then you got, in this example, it's 50% depreciation, brings it down to $50, actual cash value, and they're holding back that $50. So when this person goes out and spends the $100, they're going to get their $50 back. You don't want to get into that. Like I said, it's a bad game and you'll lose because they're going to wear you down. So you want to get to that limit of the policy any which way you can, defendably. Got to do it right. You got to do it right. And if you count the toothpicks, you'll get there. This is kind of in there too. Moving along, inventory tips, and keep a pad and pen with you at all times. You never know when your brain comes up with, oh man, I forgot this or that. Draw out each room one by one. These are just tips and ideas. Visualize and draw the bureaus, closets, including shelves and drawers. Don't forget about what's under the bed. You know, we're scrambling for space a lot of times. We'll stuff stuff up over the closet, under the bed, in the corner of the garage. That all matters. That's how you're going to get those numbers up. All that stuff that you think is worthless is now, you can get paid full retail value plus tax plus delivery. So if you look at it this way, if you had a massive sale, you took every item out of your house and put it on display, and it all sold for full retail plus tax plus delivery. That's how to look at the claim. Use family and friends. A lot of times people call and say, what can we do to help? Put them to work. Give them 5 or 6 pages of your inventory to price out. That's how they can help. Okay, it's a big job, guys. No joke. Who can represent you? Attorneys? Yes, they can represent you, but you don't have a legal problem here. You don't have a legal issue unless they deny the claim. Okay, but they can certainly represent you in a claim. Public adjusters, us, yeah, we're licensed by the state Department of Insurance. We're bonded to represent the public. Contractors cannot. Okay, so doozy, don't get buffaloed by a contractor saying, oh, we'll negotiate your claim. Don't worry about it. It's illegal. They can't do it. There was a sting operation here back in '08, and some of them went to jail. So that's critical. Insurance agents and brokers, Senate Bill 488 passed last January of 17, which made it no longer doable for an agent to try to negotiate, because the agent's selling you the policy and the broker selling it, they're an extension of the insurance company. So how can you go to the insurance company and say, hey, pay my client more, but I'm still representing the company, so it doesn't work that well. So that's kind of the program. I want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to hang around. If you know anybody that can benefit from the information we've laid out to you guys tonight, we'll be here next Tuesday and again on the 18th, and that's it.
One last thing on the inventory, if you've got pictures on the cloud, if you have relatives, parties that you've had at the house, get a hold of those photos. It's going to help you remember what you had in your home is going to help with the contractor and determining the finishes you had.
We'll be here to
Thank
answer
you,
more
everybody.
questions for you. Come on up if you have questions. Thank you.
So he had a question.